long drawn election. We have finally come to the result day, and the results are out. And in many states, we have seen some stunning performances. At the same time, a lot of political calculations that have gone terribly wrong. Some of them have come out on predicted lines. We are here to discuss that. We have a panel which will give you and decipher this result in each of those states that have gone to polls. First up, we have Mr. Srinivasan, the editor in chief of the Federal. Next, we have M. Sarita Verma. She's a senior journalist from Kerala. She was also the former Kerala bureau chief of the Financial Express. Thanks a lot for joining, ma'am. So first, we'll come to Tamil Nadu, the state that has seen results on the lines of exit polls that were announced, or the exit polls that were carried out and were put out by various channels and agencies a couple of days back. DMK coming back to power, and also several surprises there for the BJP, for the AIDMK. I'll come to you first, Mr. Srinivasan. How do you see the results that have come out in the Tamil Nadu?
See, the results in Tamil Nadu are on the expected lines. It was expected that DMK would lead the elections, would win. The alliance led by them will do well. But if you look at most of these opinion polls, they kind of indicated a sweep for DMK, that they would get somewhere between 160 and 180 seats. That hasn't happened. Why?
Yes.
If you go into the details, we will still know because the results are still coming out. But what appears that the strategy of the opposition to float as many friends as possible to cut the votes which may go to DMK positively, that tactics seem to have succeeded. So what has happened is, while DMK has got its votes, what it got in the previous 2016 election, but it hasn't got those additional votes which are important to score a big victory. And those votes seem to have gone to MNM, AMMK, and NTK, three separate outfits. All of them among themselves seem to have taken away those crucial 10 to 12% votes. We don't have those details yet, but that's what it seems to have happened. So DMK is on the lead. Probably DMK, you will see Stalin forming the government. It's been a long wish of Stalin to become a chief minister. That probably will come true. But, it's not an outright sweep for them.
It's not an outright sweep. It also means OPS, but the EPS,
It's an
OPS.
outright, sorry, let me correct. It's an outright victory, but not a normal landslide like you normally see in Tamil Nadu.
Absolutely. Which means the EPS OPS combination did not do as badly as it was projected.
Yes. You see, even in the run-up to the polls, Edapadi positioned himself as somebody who has done a fair amount of work as far as governing the state is concerned. Look, we have to imagine this election is unique in the sense that two prominent leaders who have ruled in Tamil Nadu for decades, two prominent leaders, Jayalalitha and Karnataka, both are not there. So the elections are held in their absence. So Edapadi has come up and kind of managed to hold together his party. But we also need to remember one more factor. There's a lot of freebies and cash awards announced by the government in the run-up to the elections. Also, one tactical tie-up which he did with PMK, Party Makal Katchi, seemed to have helped in his western belt and partly in other areas.
Yes, that seemed to have really worked. You mentioned about Seema, and you mentioned about Kamal Hassan. A lot of them are managing to garner votes. As you rightly mentioned, we'll have to wait for the exact details, the vote share. But if you look at it prima facie, whose votes have these parties now managed to eat into or do some bit of damage?
It's largely AIDMK votes. AIDMK and its alliance. See, AIDMK has got a better alliance now. As compared to earlier, they have more parties now. So their alliance should have had a larger vote share. And that has not happened. So basically, the alliance vote share of AIDMK has gone to these parties. That's how it looks like. Though NTK, that Seeman's Nam Tamil Katchi, which is a Tamil nationalist, it speaks of Tamil nationalism, has been consistently improving its vote share. They may not got
Yes.
any seat in the assembly, but they are improving the vote share. Seem to be one factor. The second is MNM, which is basically AMMK. Sorry,
Hmm.
AMMK is basically which is, if you remember, Sasikala's nephew,
Yes,
he
TTV Dinakaran.
Dinakaran. He had launched that party. That also seemed to have taken a sizable share of votes in the southern districts, which again goes from the AIDMK slice. But the other crucial thing is, ideally, a DMK would have hoped that some of these votes would come to them instead of those anti-incumbency votes or the votes which has happened because of the splits. Rather than going to DMK, they seem to have gone to these parties.
Absolutely. While on the one hand, DMK winning, as it was projected in the exit poll and how it was expected, going by the trends ahead of the election. Similarly, in Kerala, LDF coming back with a good majority there, and UDF pretty much being routed. BJP not making gains to the level that it was expected. Sarita Verma, how do you look at the results from Kerala without getting into too much of detail on the surface of it, unexpected lines? How would you read it?
The win was unexpected in the sense that it has defied Kerala's tradition of having the LDF and UDF, the left front and the CPM led left front and the Congress led UDF coming one after the other subsequently. It was like a seesaw. On
Yes, it
one
would
one
always
term
alternate. Yeah.
it was alternate. This tradition was so in that sense it was a surprise. But then in the last couple of years, we had a feeling that LDF was going to the rules. There was no anti-incumbency in the air, and also the surveys had also indicated a huge win for LDF. But of course not in the scale in which it was delivered. I suspect even whether the LDF in themselves believe that they will be able to come to such they'll be able to deliver such huge win. All that the Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan had said right before the election, right before the results came, was that it will. I mean, probably that was more of out of a kind of a political statement than a confidence statement. He said that he would better last time, but then it had actually bettered last time. For example, in 2016 assembly election, the position was something like this: LDF 91, UDF 47, and NDA 1. This year and 2021 so far. I mean, the results have not been completely declared. It is, yes, the ends have to be loose ends have to be tied up. But then, as it is, LDF has made a whopping 99, won 99 seats, and UDF has been decimated to 41 seats, and NDA has been zero.
Well, what worked? What worked for the LDF? Because people of Kerala have constantly voted out governments and brought in another government or other party to power. But this time, to buck the trend after 40 long years, despite having several challenges in the run up to the election, Kerala's had Nipah virus, Kerala's had floods. It was also the first state to be hit by COVID. Despite all that, to come back to power, what really worked? Is it Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan's charm as the chief minister, or is it more? Is there more, or is it also the failure of the UDF?
I would say there are at least three causes. One is definitely political. One is that the voter, the Kerala voter, is essentially it has Kerala has a very deep secular fabric, and the rise of BJP in the last couple of years, following the Shabarimala melodrama, was probably far more than the average voter can take. And this was probably they banked upon when they chose upon the two fronts, relatively politically strong, united. The left side was more united, and so politically they tend to gravitate towards the voter tended to gravitate towards a stronger, more united front. That was one reason. Probably they felt that, and also, as you said, the Pinarayi Vijayan factor. He had a charisma of being an uncompromising, unrelenting. While Congress was led by leaders like Humanjanti and Ramesh Chennithala, who were likely to compromise with religious religious forces who to try to get to appease the public. So they probably want to give a strong message, a message for secularism. That is one reason, and they thought LDF was more able to deliver that punch.
Can I ask a question, Harish?
Yes, yes.
Is it consolidation in favor of secularism, as you are saying that even Chennithala and others, while they were during election campaigns, almost sounded in some issues as if they are B team of BJP, in some issues. Therefore, is that a consolidation of secularism, or on the other hand, there was a fear among Christians that if UDF comes to power, possibly, there is a communal angle possibly that, the Muslim parties will get more powerful. Was there any such worry?
That was mentioned as an undercurrent, but then the results would feel. For example, I would give you an example where in 3 seats BJP was thought to make strong inroads. One is in Palghat, where the Metro man Sridharan was. Two or other places. In Palghat, he was beaten by he was beaten by a Congress person and a Muslim uh, former former MLA, Shafi Parambil. So, which means that if this fear was active, the voter wouldn't choose probably locally it was a Congress person. The Congress in each place, the voter chose which of the candidate quality also mattered, of course, and chose the candidate who was strong to beat down the BJP candidate, a strong person which are of candidate of national caliber as E. Sridharan was defeated by a Congress MLA. So, which kind of defeats this theory that there is this apprehension of Christian apprehension of love
Yeah,
jihad.
I'm saying because they raised the love jihad. In fact, in central Kerala, that was an issue which was raised.
But then that probably routed by other consideration. Secondly, beyond political factors, there is also one reason, as you said, before COVID, Kerala had, in the last 4 or 5 years, Kerala had been surviving calamities after calamities. First, there was Oki, the cyclone, then the floods. Then in 2018, floods came. 2019 also somewhat, although not in the same scale, the floods came again. So then after that, this COVID was Nipah, the virus was there.
Right.
Then COVID was there. All these calamities, there was a feeling that the government there was a kind of professional quality of management of all these calamities. They were able to. The LDF was able to use its clockwork machinery, cadre machinery to drive it to a certain amount of welfare crisis management.
Right, I got it. But I have another question. Rahul Gandhi very spiritedly campaigned in Kerala. In fact, he also campaigned in southern parts of Tamil Nadu, and that seemed to have worked well for the Congress party. But the same hasn't happened in Kerala, though in 2019 election they did very well in Kerala. So what happened this time? Why Rahul was not able to make such an impression over the electorate there as he did earlier?
the Rahul factor, as you rightly commented, the Rahul factor is actually it is a weighing of personal charisma of Rahul Gandhi against a person of like Pinarayi Vijayan, who was there and now, and a person of, and more important, a person of authority. Rahul Gandhi, even when he comes, he's like a visiting professor. He comes and he has a certain amount of goodwill. He comes and delivers it. Next day, it is forgotten. While Pinarayi Vijayan was there, and there is a
He's
feeling
a
about
man on the ground who actually delivers. So
that is one. Then again, thirdly, which Pinarayi Vijayan just right now after the when he addressed a press conference, and he was saying that as he said, there was a there is a feeling. I feel that it is a female or voter. That female voter, as you probably know, Kerala is a state where there are more female voters than male voters.
right.
And one serious economic challenge that Kerala now faces is unemployment and educated
Yes.
unemployment. And the female female work ratio, the work participation rate is one of the lowest in the country, despite being a state of literacy, which that is educated females are not getting jobs. So the Pinarayi government one. Now I suppose we can call it Pinarayi government two. Pinarayi government had drawn a manifesto which was pinpointing, generating more more jobs for the for educated youth, especially women. So probably this could have attracted this, that there is a kind of gender friendly image that that the government was knowingly or unknowingly playing it.
Yeah.
That could
Clearly,
also,
clearly, several things worked for Pinarayi Vijayan's government, and it's coming back to power, breaking a trend of nearly 40 years. The other state where a lot of focus was there, also perhaps one of the uh, longest election phases in the recent history, West Bengal. Finally, Trinamool Congress managing to come back to power there. Mr. Nirmalya Banerjee joins us. He's a senior journalist. He's been tracking West Bengal for a few decades now, and perhaps he's someone who can tell us what really worked for the TMC. Mr. Banerjee, high decibel campaign by the BJP, from the Prime Minister to the Home Minister, a whole list of BJP leaders descending in Kolkata, other parts of West Bengal. We've had large-scale defection that happened from Trinamool Congress to the BJP, but still looks like the BJP couldn't really cross that 100 figure.
No, you see, that is the irony. BJP, the way the BJP campaign, that I think went against the BJP. That worked against the BJP and helped Trinamool Congress. Because the thrust of BJP's campaign was the polarization of the voters on religious lines between the Hindus and the Muslims. But what has happened is that as a consequence, all the Muslim votes, Muslims got alarmed, and all the Muslim votes, they concentrated with Trinamool Congress. Whereas what the BJP had expected, the Hindu votes will go to a polarized form to BJP, that didn't happen. The Hindus voted much more openly. If you see it will be evident by the polling figures.
Yes.
Trinamool has polled nearly 50%, 49% of the votes. That is the initial figure. So without getting a substantial portion of the Hindu votes, BJP could not have, Trinamool could not have reached this figure. And if you see how the entire Muslim vote has gone in favor of Trinamool Congress today, you take two districts, Malda and Murshidabad. These were the Murshidabad, you have 60% minority, and Malda, you have 50% minority. These are traditional Congress belts. But this time, Congress has not been able to win any seat from these two districts. All these votes have gone to Trinamool Congress.
Yes.
That is one. Now, if you see Nandigram, if you see how the Nandigram results developed. It will be very evident. Mamata Banerjee was losing for quite some time. She was trailing behind Subandhu Adhikari of BJP. Now, if Mandegram's this pattern is this, they have got two blocks, block 1 and block 2. Now, block 2 is Muslim vote is pretty less. It is basically Hindu vote, whereas
Okay.
block 1 is Muslims have a very large concentration. Now, what happens is that first they took the counting of block 2 votes because block 2 has booth number 1, starts from there. So there she started trailing, but that trailing was not to such an extent that it will mean her loss. She was trailing by about 5, 6,000, 7,000, 800,000 maximum. But when she entered this block 1, which is block 1, which is the minority, she gained rapidly and won. So this is a very test case how the Muslims have voted completely in favor of the Muslims.
So, Mr. Banerjee, I have a question. In your view, it's a tactical voting by Muslims. They have voted.
Pardon?
It's a kind of a tactical voting by Muslims that all of them have decided en bloc to vote for Trinamool Congress. But the Hindus have voted more for a secular cause. That's what you're saying. That's what has happened. And that has happened at the cost of both left and Congress party.
No, secular cause, if you call it a secular cause, because Hindus voted for a secular cause.
Yeah.
Hindus, this did not cut much eyes with the Hindus in Bengal, because here the ethos are completely different today. Always. I mean, here liberal democracy, left traditions, these have been very deeply rooted in the soil of Bengal. So here you cannot say that just Joy Sri Ram you shout and people will vote for that. This is not going to happen. This has not happened. And even if you see the Hindu card, some TV commentators saying very rightly that this Hinduism that BJP was promoting here, that is different from the Hinduism that has been inherited in Bengal. There is a from Ram Prasad to Ramakrishna. Exactly. I mean, this is the land of Durga and Kali. So here, if you just shout and then you will get all the votes. So that didn't happen.
Mr. Banerjee, what was the difference that the BJP made significant gains in the 2019
Pardon?
election? What is the difference
Yeah.
this time round? The BJP made significant gains in the 2019 general election, but this time round they haven't managed to consolidate from there on over the last nearly 2 years to ensure that they can cross the 100 mark in Bengal.
Yeah.
Is it just that the people of Bengal voted differently in a general election? Or has it got to do anything with the Trinamool Congress making a course correction post that general election? Prashant Kishore was roped in, and there were several other strategies that the West Bengal government, the TMC, went ahead over the last 2 years. Did that work? How do you decipher that?
No, firstly, 2019 was Lok Sabha vote.
Yes.
This is an assembly vote. So the coordinates are quite different. And 2019, certain factors which were played an all India role on an all India basis for BJP's victory, they had they were a factor in Bengal also. That cannot be doubted. Now here, but this time, this is assembly poll. It is Mamata Banerjee's vote basically. So and these people have understood that if the BJP comes here, then the many people are afraid that the ethos will be, there is an attempt to thrust an alien ethos in Bengal. So but even then BJP to an extent has been able to retain its vote and the score sheet in North Bengal. North Bengal BJP has done much better. I don't have the exact figures. All the figures haven't come to me as yet. But then, if you see districts of Kuch Bihar, Jalpaiguri, Alipurduar, and even Darjeeling,
Yes.
These districts, all these places in 2019, Trinamool didn't get any Lok Sabha seat.
Yeah, Mr.
This
Banerjee, I
time
have a
also
question for
BJP.
you. I have a question for you. How do you see the future of left and Congress? Because you see, after all, BJP has gained from 3 seats now, nearly about 60, 70. I don't know what's the final count it could be, but there is a huge improvement in their vote share and the number of seats as well. In BJP's case, if you just
Yeah.
take standalone, you don't go by the rhetoric of winning and sweeping election, all that. If you don't go by that, their performance is still very remarkable. So, therefore, what is the future of left and Congress there?
And most of it is
Left
coming
Congress,
from left.
Yeah,
it is poor. I mean, it is bleak because what the BJP has succeeded in doing one thing. They have introduced this culture of, in Bengal, the voting was never used to take place on communal lines or ethnic lines. To an extent, BJP has been able to introduce that. In Bengal, the left parties have always won on the issues of class and economic struggle and all these things. Now we see that these things are taking a backseat this time. So, and looks like that they have these divisions. They have been able to succeed in introducing to some extent. So BJP may have lost, but BJP has come to stay in Bengal. That is one thing. Secondly, unfortunately, CPIM made a mistake. The CPIM lost to Trinamool very badly in 2011. They lost power, and 2016, and after that, they have got a valid point that their supporters were persecuted. So now they thought that BJP will give them protection. So everywhere it seems that those were with 3 p.m. They have voted this time with BJP. And even in 2019, the same thing had happened. Otherwise, BJP would not have been able to come to such big percentages in 2019. And even this time, they have got 37% votes. So the CPM support base, unfortunately, has shifted to BJP. And it will be difficult for CPM now to recoup this space. So CPM's prospect is a little big. And if you see Congress problem is that Trinamool Congress has reached away. Basically, Trinamool Congress was broken from Congress. So, the main kernel of the Congress has been taken away by Trinamool. So, Congress, except for one or two pockets, they don't have much hope or
yeah.
in
I
coming
want
days
to
also.
take you to a completely different subject. See, Mamata Banerjee has won the elections, but she seemed to have lost her own seat. How do you see this? Because
Lost her?
lost her own
I
seat
didn't get lost her.
from
Her,
Nandigram. Is that has she?
Yes.
It appears
seat.
that she has lost her seat from Nandigram.
Yeah.
So so there is already a demand, from some certain TV channels, which are of course more friendly towards BJP, saying that she should take a moral responsibility and shouldn't become the CM again. How do you see that happening? Why did she lose?
No, I did get your question again because the sound is a little low. Tell me again.
Okay,
What's the
the
question?
question is, looks like Mamata Banerjee is losing from Nandigram. It
Yeah.
might go to the court, it might go to the EC, they might ask for a recount, all that. But looks like she's on a very sticky wicket in Nandigram. And several media outlets which are friendly to the BJP believe that Mamata Banerjee should now take the moral high ground and not claim the chief minister's chair. What really went wrong in Nandigram? Is it sheer Suvendu Adhikari and his election management skills in Nandigram that worked? What really worked there? Or was she so focused on the
No,
larger getting seats in the other parts of West Bengal that she didn't focus on her own constituency?
no, I don't know whether yes, she has lost won by a small margin. That is true. And now whether they will go to court, ask for recounting, that is a question of future. But point is that even if this is challenged, Mamata Banerjee, her party has wronged home. So that is technically this is not a very difficult. Then she will get elected from another seat.
Yes.
So there is no problem in her running the government. I don't see.
No, but
And
about this
another thing
whole,
which I want to tell you, the first you asked this, that this campaigning, despite this campaigning by high profile campaigning by the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, why? Another factor is the factor of women. You see, unfortunately, the Prime Minister's way of campaigning has been criticized much in media, if you have noticed. The way he, revert to Mamata Banerjee, the
in fact,
way she uttered
that was my
certain
next
certain
question,
uh,
Mr.
certain phrases which were quite no, they were offensive. They were
In
taken
fact,
to be
that was my
offensive.
next question, Mr. Banerjee. How much of a role did that did that address where the Prime Minister went calling Didi O Didi, which many said was
No, but
almost
but the
bordering on a
question is
cat call?
you can call a person in a different accent. I mean different way. I mean calling is a you can call in many ways, and that did not go well possibly with women. And the state president of BJP, she made a very disparaging remark
Yes.
about Mamata Banerjee. And and after all, Mamata Banerjee is a woman. So it seems that Mamata Banerjee has got the sympathy of the women voters, and they are, of course, I mean, they are almost half of the voters. So
True.
that also, the in a way, the Trinamool, I should say, the campaign has boomerang the way BJP campaign.
True. True. A quick word on Assam on expected lines as many exit polls predicted.
Assam,
Yeah.
uh, Assam, yes, Assam. BJP has managed to form the government, although with a reduced majority.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
on this, what I am told is that in the BTAD area, particularly what went wrong with the Grand Alliance is that in the BTAD area, this Hagrama, they were expecting more seat. Hagrama is this time with Hagrama, who used to run the board earlier,
Hmm.
but trouble broke out between BJP and him over the elections. So he's with Congress now, but they were expecting more seats. But Hagrama has not got those seats. That's what has gone in against Congress in Assam.
True.
Looks like.
True. True. I'll in fact I have a question for Sarita Verma. Before that, Mr. Srinivasan, Puducherry, NR Congress coming to power. So much of drama just before the election, but looks like the electorate has gone with NR Congress, probably sensing that there would be some sort of a problem if they still go ahead and vote for the Congress DMK alliance there. Or you think the DMK Congress alliance, the confusion that persisted there in the run up to the election, did that cost them these seats?
You see, it's a very interesting case what has happened in Puducherry. Uh, Namachivayam, who was with the Congress party and
Yes.
almost number two to Narayanaswamy, was
Yes.
cut up with him because he wanted to become the chief minister in the previous regime and he couldn't.
Yes.
And the seat went to Narayanaswamy, who was seen as perhaps somebody who was imposed from Delhi.
Yes.
And therefore, that's the reason he left the party, joined BJP, and he has won a seat now.
Yes.
Now, it is interesting. BJP said that we are fielding NDA candidate. Now, they haven't made very explicit who the chief ministerial candidate would be, but it is very clear that it is NR Congress Rangaswamy on who has actually led the alliance, and it is basically his victory.
Yes.
So, but it is going to be very interesting there how the politics is going to turn out. One has to see, because BJP once again might have three nominated members who can actually, if you remember, in the last assembly they voted, they were crucial votes. So Puducherry's case, even after Narayan Swamy, Rangaswamy wins, and probably he will form the government. Probably he would become the chief minister. One doesn't know, uh, but it is going to be interesting post-poll also. So the Puducherry story, as far as I consider, is not yet over.
Absolutely. And the numbers are not very, very comfortable for anyone over there. A few people changing their mind could go anyway. Sarita Verma, we need to discuss about BJP and their ambition in Kerala and how horribly wrong. It's gone this time around. Uh, they were hoping that they would retain the Neemup seat. That hasn't happened. They were hoping that Mr. E. Sridharan can get them a seat in Palakkad. That hasn't happened. Although in Palakkad they were initially in the lead in the first few hours or so. The state president, who lost by 79 votes last time in Kasargod, hasn't managed to gain any and win that seat this time. He's lost his second seat, Koni also. What really went wrong for the BJP? The assessment is just like in Bengal, the BJP was hoping that it can cut into the Congress and the other votes and at least become the principal opposition party in the coming few years. But looks like although they might have achieved that in Bengal, in Kerala, it's a long way away.
First of all, the whole basis, the premise of their ambition was itself quite shaky. In 2016 election, they managed to open an account mainly because of the candidate quality. The person was a very senior former socialist. He's right now 90. He's 90-year-old. Mr. Raj Gopal. So
Yes.
what he opened, he became an MLA not because he was a BJP man, but because of his personal candidate quality. The BJP probably first of all mistook it for basic, having a basic ground for starting their operation. Secondly, the Shabarimala issue. After the Shabarimala issue, there was a lot of polarization of Hindutva forces in districts like Pathanamthitta and some Palghat, some places. So they were thinking of encashing it into votes in the recent times. But in between this Shabarimala drama and the current election, the last 2-3 years, the state's entire activity shifted, social activity shifted into the management of crisis. All crises, while the flood was partly localized, but it affected the entire state in one way or the other by being refugee shelters. So by giving them a climate fear of that it could happen in any part of the state. That is one. After that, the Nipah virus was localized in Kozhikode, and the state was able to contain it. Then came this COVID crisis, and there was, to a certain extent, effective management by the state. So the feeling that there is a state, there is a government that is able to manage a crisis, that feeling superseded whatever polarization Hindutva forces was there, and the state's essential social secular psyche asserted itself. As you know, probably the state Kerala is one of the states with strongest population density, and in each state, the distribution of religions in each district, the distribution of religions, the geographical distribution is very interspersed. So there are no Pakka Muslim area, there are no Pakka Christian area, Pakka Hindu area. So this also worked into the in favor of the consolidation of CPM.
Okay, as I come to the last.
This probably and also this is on the supply side. On the other hand, the BJP leadership was not competent enough. There is no strong, charismatic leader to hold together the BJP flock. There were divisiveness within themselves. The candidates were decided in the very last minute. There were strategic, tactical mistakes, like the state president standing in contesting in two places at the same time, not able to cover both places at the same time. So whatever their strategy and manpower were completely dissipated. They were distracted, while the left forces were able to use.
Absolutely, he wouldn't win Manjeshwaram or Koi. Before I come for concluding remarks from everyone, a quick question to you, Sarita Verma, is what happens to Congress in Kerala now? they're out of power for the last 5 years. They're out of power for the next 5 years. Many, when I was traveling in Kerala, when we were doing ground reports, many Congress leaders or others feared that it would mean that a lot of Congress leaders wouldn't even mind joining, say, a BJP because they don't see much future there. How do you see things panning out for the Congress in Kerala?
I agree with you. I think it's a very sad story for Congress because there are plenty of young leaders with strong, very strong leadership qualities, strong candidate qualities. But then the sheer problem of not not holding together. There is no strong, charismatic leader. Umachandi was one, but then he is extremely, he's not more than aged. He is not, his health is not doing well. He's not able to go and reach everywhere as earlier. So there is this, there is this vacuum of an umbrella figure.
Absolutely.
Hold them together. So this is likely to, as you rightly pointed out, some people are likely to go to BJP. Some people are likely to cross to the left camp. There is also the possibility that it could give birth to a brave new party within from the forces.
Yes.
In the future, there are lots of political. It is going to be, the Congress is going in Kerala is going to be a political crucible where all kinds of experiments we are going to see.
Absolutely. Bad news for the Congress in Kerala doesn't end today. Perhaps it starts from today. Mr. Banerjee, coming to you in the last 10 minutes of the show, what does the results today from Bengal to Tamil Nadu to Kerala, Puducherry, everywhere, what does it mean for the Modi Shah regime and how they deal with elections? Should this be seen as a referendum on how they've dealt with issues like COVID, before that, several issues that have happened, or is it too localized? Also, what it means for the Congress. Congress has absolutely nothing to gain from this election. In fact, they should be worried about losing their vote base in whatever little they had in, say, West Bengal or in Kerala. So, how would you see the election results today at a much larger level, at a national level? What is the kind of effect this will have in the coming years?
No, I think Mr. Kailash Vijayvargiya, who is the General Secretary of BJP, which is in charge of Bengal.
Yes.
Now, after the results, he said that BJP will have to review and rethink about Bengal, their strategy. So it appears that they have understood they have been mistaken. And one issue which I like to mention, that is this CAA. Now they were using the CAA, trying to use the CAA to go the Mathua community. Mathua community are basically, they have come from Bangladesh, earlier
Yes.
Pakistan. And they were saying that we will give you this citizenship and all that. They are trying that. They have got 25-30 seats. They are the major deciding factor in the Bangladesh border areas. But now it appears that even these people didn't vote for the BJP because they have understood that in this CAA, BJP has got into a trouble in Assam. Because Assam, the Assamese will not accept CAA. And so the promise that they are making in Bengal, that they will not be able to keep. And this has become clear that BJP is making different kinds of promises in different states, whatever suits them. So they will have to, I think they will have to rethink what they are going to do about it.
True. Sarita Verma, same question to you. The kind of impact this will have on the national scenario, how the Modi Shah election machinery now looks at other elections in different states coming up later in the year, what it also means for the Congress nationally.
The hands of Congress has been extremely weakened. So, in fact, that the united machinery of LDF and UDF shows up projects in the national front now probably may get stronger in one way because LDF has an upper hand with the Congress people. The commands, if you understand, if you get what I mean. I mean now after the election, many of the UDF, the Congress legislators would be psychologically will have or rather the LDF would have an upper hand over them. So when they have to have a joint bit at the center, the unity would be stronger, but then it would be a very weakened contest. So that would be one result. BJP we would also, and also the earlier enmity between the strong hostility between the center and state, the center state's relation regarding transfer of funds, etc.
Yes.
Now that battle will continue unabated.
Absolutely. Point 2.0 of that. Mr. Srinivasan, final remarks. It was a final frontier, whether
Yes.
it was West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, or Kerala. It was seen as a final frontier for this successful election machinery of Amit Shah and Mr. Modi. That has been stopped in a way.
Yeah, that's a way actually media loves to frame the elections, But the interesting stuff here is, look, the performance of BJP as far as parliamentary election 2014 and 19 has been exceptional. But as far as state assembly elections are concerned, it's been checkered. It's not been a very good record, actually. If you see state after state, what has happened in Rajasthan, what has happened in Madhya Pradesh, what has happened in Karnataka, what has happened in Goa, if you see all these states, it's actually much gain has happened post-poll. Something or other thing has happened. I'm not going into those details. Everybody knows that. So assembly elections, I think BJP would have to learn that it's a different ball game. The one size fits all, the same kind of polarizing politics, and they have to start understanding the regional sensibilities, the local culture. There is a certain amount of sub-nationalism which exists there. I mean, those nuances. So they are still seen largely as a North Indian party, but they did try to make, and they made some inroads in the East, and also now they tried in West Bengal. They seem to have flopped. In Tamil Nadu, they've not been able to do in Kerala. So they'll have to develop also a lot of local leaders. This dominance of one or two people, an over-centralization, the kind of thing which, if you remember earlier, happened during Mrs. Gandhi's regime. The same kind of things seem to be happening here. So there are lots of lessons for BJP. I'm not somebody who would be preaching what they should do. They're very smart. One thing about them, election to election, they also learn. But in this one aspect, I think this should have given them some final lessons. As far as Congress is concerned, I think they have to now truly go federal. Have to understand the spirit of federalism. And instead of trying to become, once again, a dominating party, they have to now learn to strike alliances, because what the elections approve, whether it is DMK in Tamil Nadu, TMC, Mamta, or even Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, see the regional satraps, or whatever you may call, they have managed to hold on their own. So if they are able to do some kind of a smart understanding with them, maybe there is some hope. Otherwise, emerging on their own is going to be very difficult for them.
Absolutely. On a day when regional parties have had the final say or the final laugh, one thing seems to be very clear from today's results. The MLAs are not going towards a resort anytime soon. That was one fear in some state. That's not happening. There's been a clear-cut mandate by people of all these states and union territory. Thanks a lot for all of you for joining on this show. Well, that's it in this special broadcast of the Federal. Do tune in to the social media handles of the Federal to get more news and updates on all the election related stories and also the COVID pandemic that's hit the nation terribly. Thank you.
Thank you.